Hi, everybody.
And here we are. Welcome to episode 4 of A Fern Between Us. We're doing a special
Zoom between us.
And we're doing a Zoom between us this time for a couple minutes. We've got Dr. Lucas Schreiber with us to answer some of our medical questions. You want to give a brief...
Yeah, for those of you that don't know Lucas, he graduated with highest honors from his undergrad. He won the McGraw-Hill Award given to the top 2 medical students from UNM. Won the Outstanding Academic Achievement Award. I can't read, sorry. And ranked number 2 of 2,000 in his graduating medical school class. So he's a badass. And that's not just my personal opinion, it's fact.
He's been ranked number 1 for Best of Taos 9 years running now, and we think he's number 1 in the world, so that's saying a lot, I think.
So welcome, Luke. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule to chat with us about this crazy virus.
Thank you. I'm flattered by that introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So how are you doing personally handling all of this insanity?
You know, it's been a whirlwind. It was total chaos initially, just constantly, the rules changing every day, the recommendations changing every day. But we're starting to get it kind of dialed in, and I think we've got our minds around what we need to do and how to keep patients safe, and I've managed to acquire the protective equipment for the most part to keep my staff protected. And we're doing a lot of telemedicine, so I'm getting used to this Zoom format, and it's working out pretty well.
Do you think that'll be something that stays, like this telemedicine thing happening? Is that going to be a continuation after Corona's no longer a major issue?
I hope so. It's sort of been a fringe option that some insurance companies cover, and generally only for patients that are in these kind of isolated communities that can't get into a physician or don't have access to a specialist. But I hope this causes some lasting change in medicine, and I think it really will be a good service for patients and improve our outreach and accessibility.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into a couple of questions. The first one is, how long does the novel coronavirus live on a surface? So there's lots of stuff out there that's telling us all kinds of different things. From your medical background, what do you know it to be?
So that's a good question. First of all, we should just briefly talk about how respiratory infections are spread, and there's 2 main types of spread. There's aerosolized particles and there are respiratory droplets. So for example, tuberculosis is spread only through aerosolized particles. So those are just tiny little particles of infectious agent that may be released from your system when you cough or even just when you talk. So that can happen and can spread to somebody who's in the vicinity. Influenza, for example, is spread just through respiratory droplets. So that's really kind of bigger particles that come out with some small particles of saliva when you cough or sneeze. And the concerning thing about the novel coronavirus is it seems to spread both through aerosolized particles and respiratory droplets.
Oh, wow.
But that being said, the aerosolized particles can last several hours in the air. So if you're standing close to someone who's actively infected, and just talking to them potentially could result in transmission of the virus. And then in terms of respiratory droplets, it depends on the type of surface that a droplet lands on. For example, they may last, or it can survive about 4 hours on copper. It can survive for up to 24 hours on cardboard, and we think it lasts about 72 hours on plastic and stainless steel surfaces. And then complicating that further, there was some data and studies done on the Diamond Princess cruise ship, and after they evacuated all of these sick passengers, 17 days later they still found some live virus on those surfaces. Now, we don't know if that quantity it's still infectious, but there were live viral particles found 17 days later.
Wow, that is wild.
And really scary to just not really know anything, and to have this continue to unfold with such new information over and over and over again. One of the things that, there was a doctor that did a video and put it all over social media about how we needed to sanitize all of our groceries. And then now the CDC is saying that's not true. So what do you think about that element? If it can last on plastic and say you have a plastic milk jug, do you think that you should sanitize that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I did actually see that video that went viral, and I think some of it was, reasonably based in scientific theory. I don't think we really have proof or any confirmation yet that the virus can spread through food or through the mail or through packaging on your groceries necessarily, but it's conceivable that if somebody had sneezed on a box of cereal that you shortly thereafter pick up and throw in your bag, then you touch your hand to your face, that theoretically you could transmit the virus. So I think it's probably reasonable to practice some of those recommendations that he made in the video. We just can't have any definitive data at this point that there have been any cases that transmitted through food, for example, or a package or mail.
Luke, I'm feeling bad over here because you're still in your workday and don't get to officially have wine in the office.
Cheers!
But cheers to you anyway for coming on board, and hopefully in an hour you can have yours or whenever it is that you get off.
So let's jump into the next question. For essential workers like yourself, how long does it take after you've been exposed for you to go into quarantine and then be let out?
So we should break that down just a little bit too. So what we mean by a potential exposure, the way the CDC defines it at this point, is a household contact. So if you live in the same house as somebody who has a confirmed or highly suspicious case of COVID-19, that's considered potential exposure. Or if you've had close contact with someone who has a confirmed or suspected case, and by close contact we mean if you've been within 6 feet of that person for more than a very brief period of time without adequate protection. So like in the medical field, for example, if we're wearing our masks, that's not considered an exposure. Okay. But for other people, yes, if you're within 6 feet of someone for more than just a brief walking by and they have a confirmed case and you didn't have a mask on, then that's considered a potential exposure. And what the current recommendations from the CDC say about that type of exposure is that you can still work. You should have your temperature checked daily before you go into work. And if you have a fever or you develop any symptoms, then obviously you're excluded from work. But if you remain asymptomatic and afebrile, then you can continue to work, but you should wear a mask for 14 days after that exposure. And I should also qualify that an exposure means those contact conditions that we discussed from 48 hours before the patient became symptomatic or anytime while they're symptomatic. So in those first 48 hours before they become symptomatic, they're thought to be highly infectious too. So if you were exposed from 48 hours before or anytime they were symptomatic, then you're considered a potential risk and you should wear a mask for 14 days thereafter. Also, you should try to maintain, as we all should anyway, the 6 feet of social distancing at work if possible. And then work site areas should be regularly cleaned and surfaces that are touched wiped down on a regular basis. So that's kind of the current guidelines from the CDC.
And how do you finish your day and go home to your family? What kind of precautions are you taking for your clothes and shoes and such?
Yeah, no, that's something I'm being pretty obsessive compulsive about, I should say. I'm wearing scrubs to work now, so because they're easier to wash. I'm basically shedding them at the door, taking my shoes off in the garage.
But you looked so handsome before in your
shower. And I'm also not kissing my wife or my kids. We're sitting at the same dinner table, and my wife and I are sleeping in the same bed. But I'm avoiding those riskier, closer contact situations, at least for the time being, because I'm more likely than many to be exposed.
Wow.
Well, I'm bummed you're wearing scrubs because you look so handsome every time you come into the office there.
He's still handsome in his scrubs.
I bet he looks even better, but it looks probably more like the show scrubs. But Zach Braff, what's that guy's name? Braff or whatever. He's handsome too.
All right, so our last medical question about this is, can you dispel some of the myths circulating about the virus? What are some of the big ones you're seeing that are not true?
So yeah, I'd say one of the big ones that you'll hear a lot about, in large part because our stable genius fearmonger and leader advertises this regularly, but President Trump, of course, has been spouting a lot about a lot of things, but among them, hydroxychloroquine, he has touted as a game changer, as a potential cure, as a treatment for COVID-19. Hydroxychloroquine is the generic for a drug called Plaquenil. It's actually an old drug that's been on the market for a long time, and it's a mild immunosuppressant, so it's used for conditions like lupus and Sjogren's and rheumatoid arthritis. It was actually used initially as an anti-malarial, so it does have some anti-infectious properties, and there has been some excitement around the possibility that it might be effective in COVID-19. There were a few small studies out of China that suggested that it did shorten the duration of illness, and I think Trump kind of grabbed onto that, just really reaching for straws to try to spin this disaster of the federal government's management of preparing for COVID-19. But actually, just yesterday, another study was released out of France that looked at 84 patients who were hospitalized with COVID-19 and pneumonia and compared them to 97 patients that were hospitalized with COVID-19 and pneumonia who were not treated with hydroxychloroquine. So the first group was treated with hydroxychloroquine, the second group was not. There was no difference in any of the clinical outcomes, death, time to discharge, or other morbidities. So it's not looking very promising, unfortunately. So that's one. I'd say the other big one that's out there, you may have heard people are saying that ibuprofen can worsen COVID-19 symptoms. And this was also kind of a somewhat irresponsible move on the part of the health minister out of France, who tweeted, was it France or Italy? Actually, it might have been, no, it was French. It was the French health minister. And he tweeted that they had experience with patients with COVID-19 that were getting worse if they'd been treated with ibuprofen for their aches and pains, fevers. And really, there's been no substantial data to support that claim either. And at this point, we don't believe that's the case.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, we have just one more question for you. It's not a medical question, but we have a write-in from Julie that sent us in earlier this week asking, what are you doing for in-home date nights with kids around? So she's putting that out there to all three of us to share. What are you doing, especially if you don't get to...
if you're not kissing.
We can be pretty creative. I'll point out that this is a respiratory virus, so we worry about respiratory spread, but not other intimacy. Anyhow, we've actually been doing some of these Zoom happy hours, which have been surprisingly fun, and we're connecting with more people. I guess that's not really date night, but the kids have been doing it with their friends, and Lindsay and I have been doing it with friends and family, and it's kind of a nice, you don't have to really commit to a whole evening. You get a half hour, an hour to talk to people and then move on. What about you guys?
Oh.
We've been doing some of the same, and then also binge watching ridiculous shows like The Tiger King, which has been fabulous.
That's still on our list. Haven't gotten there yet.
Oh man, you're gonna love the atrocity there. Oh man, it's bad.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Luke. We know you have patients waiting for you, so we'll let you go, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure, and thanks for having me. Talk to you all soon.
Thank you, brother.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so now we are going to try to move this out of the way.
How you guys doing? We'll get to the tasting now.
Yes.
And I thought that was really cool. Luke is amazing. He's always been amazing. He was our baby doctor when we had a baby, and
his dad delivered me. Grew
Right.
up with his family, so
he's been amazing, and his whole family's been amazing. And so we're stoked that he was able to make time for us in the middle of his busy schedule and stuff like that.
I also hold him 100% accountable for healing me during some really intense health issues.
That's true.
He's just brilliant, thinks outside of the box, so I'm really excited that we got to have that opportunity. So on to our tasting. We have Refosco and Aglianico, two Italian wines. I thought it might be kind of fun since a lot of us are looking to Italy and what's happening over there and the devastation. And so let's celebrate all the wonderful things about Italy, including these two very unusual grapes. We're starting with the Refosco, which is almost sold out. And it'll be another 3 months before we have the next vintage in. So if you're interested, you definitely need to get online or call us and place your order. So what is it that you love so much about the Refosco, babe?
Refosco's, let me give a little history. So
Fun to say.
Right? It comes from the Friuli region, which is located north of Venice on the northern, northeastern, whatever side of Italy. And that is where our biggest grape grower actually was from. And so he planted a little plot here in southern New Mexico and decided, he wanted to have a little taste of home or whatever. And he knew Chris and I were really into, or all four of us were really into exotic varietals and stuff like that. And there weren't but maybe a dozen producers of Refosco or nationwide producing a varietal Refosco at the time. So 2004 was our first vintage, and immediately we just fell head over heels in love with this wine. It's kind of out of the box. It's kind of, as a young vine, it was kind of showing like watermelon and fresh peas, which doesn't make any sense and it sounds horrible, but it was really good. It's the only wine that I know that compare insanely good with a salad.
Yes, blue cheese. It is amazing with blue cheese, and that's a difficult pairing. It's got these attributes that are very fresh and very fruit forward. So people that like a little bit more of a fruity wine can really like it, but people that love those wines that can age and something really unusual and incredible finds love it too. So it's one of those wines that really fits all the boxes.
It really does.
Marks all the boxes? Checks all the boxes.
Checks all the boxes. Yeah. It's kind of a medium, sultry, medium-bodied red wine. I love it. Anyway, it was my very favorite varietal that we made year after year until we found the next wine.
Switching glasses. Which, by the way, if you guys aren't doing this at home, it's really fun to open 2 bottles of wine at the same time and taste them next to each other. You really get the stark contrasts. A lot of people will say, I don't know how to tell the difference between 2 wines. Wine tastes like wine. This is how. Open a couple of bottles and taste them next to each other, and you're going to start to notice these nuances.
That's a really good call. We do it all the time. I didn't even think of that, but that's totally not what most people do. Aglianico is another Italian varietal. I kind of think of it as a Cabernet type. It's super full-bodied, just insane amounts of tannin in there. And it's fun. If you say it correctly, Aglianico, people they'll look at they never read it right because there's a G in there. You don't pronounce it with a G. It's awesome. People fumble over that all the time. It's great. But it's got big tannins, like a Cabernet. It's about the same heaviness, but a different style of fruitiness in there. It's not like blackcurrant and things like that. It's more, I don't know, how do you describe it?
I almost, another descriptor that a lot of people are a little bit put off by, but meaty. It has some kind of bacon aromatics that...
Could say like umami.
Here I am again with the bacon.
God.
The vegetarians.
People are gonna. Yeah.
You probably won't even pick that up. It's
Lots
just
of
little
umami.
notes.
Lots of umami on this one. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of I don't know. It's so yummy.
Yeah.
2 really, really great varietals. My favorite 2 reds that we produce. Try them from us first, and then also try them from everyone else because they're really cool.
Did you talk about where Aglianico is from in Italy?
No.
From the southern part of the country. So you have a north and a south to kind of showcase how different the weather, the climate, the soil, all of those things add up to really different structures in the wine bottle too.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to check in with each other. How is your pandemic going?
Pretty good. Chris and Francisco and I spent all day speaking Spanish and bottling 225 cases of wine. We got a new.
So nice to have Francisco and help.
So cool. We bottled the Pinot Noir and Malbec today, so you'll be seeing those come online here in a little bit. The Pinot Noir this year is excellent. It's on par, maybe even better. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what it ends up being in the bottle, but seems like it's on par with our last year's Pinot, maybe better. And it's
one of the really great ones. I got to taste it yesterday, and it really is one of those just epic Pinots. And for people that are wine geeks, it's often difficult to find those. It's vintage to vintage. Place to place, and so when you do nail it, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Didn't you want to ask why I was particularly dressed up today?
Why are you particularly dressed
on?
Jeez, high heels. That's a far cry from the pajamas and slippers. Oh no, you don't wear slippers.
Anyway,
why are you so dressed up, baby?
Thank you for asking.
Looking all beautiful and amazing.
I am super excited about
Are those new bangs too?
No.
Oh, okay. You're just showing them.
My sister's probably like, "What? You didn't cut your own bangs, did you?" But I'm excited about this new thing that we have launched last Friday, and so I got so excited about it coming around again this Friday. It is Fashion Forward Friday, and so you get dressed up and you pair it with one of our wines, take a picture, post it to your favorite social media, and tag us, Vivac Glam. So we wanna start playing around, make sure that at least once a week everybody gets out of their PJs. It's not a lot, but it did feel like a big workout. I gotta say that. I'm so used to rolling out of bed.
Speaking of workouts, this morning I did 30 push-ups.
Hey.
I'm starting my regimen. I am gonna start working out. It may only be 31 push-ups tomorrow. That's not a lot or whatever, but it's something. Something's gonna get me off the couch. I'm really not doing so well. Lots of calories. Not very much movement. I'm got 3 ounce, 2 ounce curls, something. I don't know.
So as we finish up today's episode, thank you again so much for tuning in and all the love and support and all of the questions that were sent in. We're going to try to get to some of those next week. We're excited to have a special guest. Yes.
Do you know what we're tasting next week?
Oh, what do you want to taste next week?
Oh, I don't know. I want to taste it all, but
I thought maybe you would say.
No, I don't have anything in mind. Darn it.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
We could go Riesling maybe, and then then we get to talk about because the world of Rieslings is pretty big, and we could
let's do Riesling and the Abbott Red.
Okay. That
so
sounds good.
Those are from 2 of our estate vineyards, the 1725 and the Abbott Vineyard, and those are both available. You can order them right now, and then you'll have them available for next Thursday when we do this and taste alongside us. We're also still doing pickup service 1 to 5 daily, so you can place an order, call it in, come and pick it up, 505-579-4441 or vivacwinery.com.
And also let us know if you guys like this format with the a Zoom between us. We've got a number of guests we'd like to pull on if it seems to work for you guys. So let us know.
Yeah. And just to finish up, do you have any tips?
Just the tips?
Oh, God. I set myself up for that one again. A wine trivia. Wait.
Do you have one? I don't know. I hadn't pre thought of one.
I know. That's why I like to throw these things at you.
I did have one. Oh, but now I don't remember. Crap.
Well, we don't have any advice today, but we would like to hear from you what you're drinking at home. We can then advise what would be similar. If you have a favorite wine that's kind of your go-to and you want to try something from us, message us and we'll tell you what's the most similar. And if you guys are having wacky dreams like we are over here, send us those too. Maybe we'll have to talk about your dream on the air. All right, guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you next.
Cheers.
Yes, next week.